longest running movie franchise in history, Godzilla. It's had its fair share of corny and bad moments, but today we won't be talking about those. Today we will celebrate the franchise by going through its 10 best scenes. This is only accounting for the movies, no comics, and no anime movies. Without further ado, let's start the list. But before that, we need to discuss some things. Firstly, I'll only do one scene from each movie in order to keep the list fresh. If I didn't, most of the list would be Shin -1 in the original. Secondly, I won't include any GXK in this list because I haven't seen the movie enough and it's just a bit too new as of recording. Thirdly, some of the scenes don't directly involve Godzilla. This list is focused on the best scenes in the Godzilla franchise overall. And lastly, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. So, number 10, Zilla vs. Godzilla 2004's Final Wars. This short scene pairs two versions of Godzilla against each other. The Godzilla from 1998, or as he's referred to in the movie, Zilla, and the Godzilla from this movie, Final Wars. The scene starts with Zilla being beamed in from the Zillion ship. We then cut to Godzilla, who is approaching Zilla. The two monsters roar at each other and the fight commences. Zilla charges towards Godzilla, but Godzilla counters with his atomic breath. In order to avoid it, Zilla leaps behind Godzilla. However, Godzilla is able to turn fast enough and knock him right into the Sydney Arts Center. From there, Zilla is defenseless and Godzilla blasts him to death with his atomic breath. This scene made it onto the list because it fully represents Final Wars. The fun, silliness, and extravagance of the film are all packed into 40 seconds. The scene perfectly shows the attitude of the movie. Also, it's here because it was a great moment for Godzilla, showing us how truly overpowered he is that he one-shot Zilla. Thus, Godzilla vs. Zilla made it onto the list because of its sheer amusement and spectacle. Number 9, The Muto Deaths, Godzilla 2014. This scene serves as a climax for the 2014 Godzilla and delivers two of the best kaiju deaths in the franchise. The MonsterVerse is known for the gory way it kills its monsters, and this film started the trend. The scene starts with the male Muto and Godzilla fighting each other. Godzilla bites him off and the Muto separates to send an aerial attack. The Muto rushes Godzilla, but as he does, Godzilla turns and impales him against the building, killing him. Godzilla pants and the building falls on him, causing him to fall. After that, Godzilla and the protagonist, Ford Brody, have a little moment as they stare at each other. As Godzilla fades into the dust, the female Muto starts to attack the boat with a nuke on him. The military distracts the Muto as Ford sends himself and the boat away from the city. However, the Muto notices, and just as she's about to kill Ford, Godzilla bites her neck. He drags her over, opens her jaw, and then does this. The scene ends with both Frody and Godzilla fainting from exhaustion. This scene was amazing. Firstly, I want to talk about the great sound design. From the Muto's roar and groans, which fit their design perfectly, to the crunch sound that is made at the male Muto's death, to Godzilla's roar and his atomic breath, Godzilla 2014 has one of the best sound design and direction of any Godzilla movie, and this scene perfectly shows it. Secondly, the scene is great because of how cathartic it is. During the course of the movie, we grow to hate the Mutos, and as the audience, we want to see more of Godzilla. This scene fulfills both of these purposes by killing the Mutos in such cool ways and finally giving us some spectacular Godzilla action. Thirdly, this scene gives us great characterization. It characterizes Godzilla by showing how he acts and works, cementing his role as king. It also characterized Ford very well, with moments like him being willing to lay down his life to get the nuke out and staring down the Muto alone. Overall, the Muto's death scene is a top 10 Godzilla scene because of its amazing sound design, cathartic action, and great characterization. Number 8, Godzilla vs. Biolante's Final Battle from 1989's Godzilla vs. Biolante. In this climactic battle, Godzilla fights his horrific genetic mutation, Biollante. The scene begins with Biollante rising from the ground and rushing Godzilla. As expected, he counters with his atomic breath. Biollante takes a hit and roars, then rushing towards at a blazing speed. Godzilla can't react fast enough, and he is entwined by her vines. However, Godzilla uses his atomic pulse to break free and blast her with his atomic breath. She counters by spewing acid all over him. Then she gets closer and bites onto his head, but Godzilla breaks free from her jaws and using his atomic breath, blasts it directly into her mouth, killing her. Godzilla then collapses, exhausted. This scene is a great demonstration of how impressive Godzilla visual effects can be. This features some of the best visual effects in the entire Heisei era. The acid, the atomic breath, Biolante's entire character, the way her vines trap Godzilla, the explosion, how fluid the suits move, the way she lights up, not to mention the cinematography. This gives us great and incredible shots that really frame the monsters in action very well. Furthermore, the scene also wraps up the themes of the movie very well. The dangers of genetic experimentation are put to rest as nature sets it back on the right course. Ultimately, Biolante's death shows us the dangers of genetic experimentation and what it can bring. Another great moment is Godzilla collapsing. It really shows you how this fight truly drained him. Also, shout out to this moment, Biolante. Thus, the final battle of Godzilla vs. Biolante was included due to great effects, cinematography, thematic resonance, and just plain awesome moments. Number 7. Godzilla vs. Kong in Hong Kong in 2021's Godzilla vs. Kong. Now, I know, another fight, but hey, the Godzilla franchise has a lot of great fights. Also, this is one of the last ones on the list, so don't worry, there are other types of scenes that will be included. The scene starts with Kong and Godzilla roaring at each other, in a sort of western standoff style. Then Kong picks up his axe and rushes Godzilla. Godzilla dodges the attack and rams him into buildings. Kong fights back and elbows his neck when he tries to unleash Godzilla's atomic breath. Kong gets the advantage for a second as Godzilla lets loose, but Kong keeps steadfast with his assault. Kong gets Godzilla on the floor, leaving Kong with enough time to grab his axe. Godzilla uses this moment to rush Kong and is about to blast him in the face when Kong shoves his axe in Godzilla's face. Does this moment remind you of anything? Godzilla gets loose and blasts Kong with his breath, but he blocks it with the axe. Kong then recoils for a moment as Godzilla tackles to the floor. Godzilla knocks the axe away from Kong and throws him into the water. From there, Godzilla unleashes the atomic breath as Kong flees from it. This continues for a while until Godzilla is able to hit Kong in the back, sending him crashing down to the floor. Godzilla then does this. Kong keeps running, and Godzilla blasts his atomic breath again. Kong is eventually able to get his axe back, and the two collide in a big bombastic moment that creates a shockwave. Kong and Godzilla are knocked onto the floor. Kong gets up and goes on top of a building. As Godzilla searches for him, he throws a crane at him to distract him. This lets Kong get the jump on Godzilla and push him against the building. The two wrestle for a while, but eventually, Godzilla gets Kong on the floor. He throws him into a couple of buildings and starts biting at him. Kong tries to fight back, but Godzilla scratches at him and places his foot on his chest. With Kong immobilized and wounded, the two roar at each other. Finally, Godzilla leaves, as Kong's left wounded on the floor with death knocking on his door. This scene was just cool, okay? Not only is it a great final battle, but a fair fight between the two because the last one was in Godzilla's territory. But it wasn't just a great culmination of the whole movie. It was also a great culmination of 60 years of filmmaking. We waited so long for the rematch, and the action and spectacle we wanted did not disappoint. Further, as a Godzilla fan, this scene also hits really hard. Their last fight, in 1962, whilst it was meant to be a draw, a lot of people, myself included, saw it more as a Kong victory. So yeah, what I'm saying is, my Godzilla bias makes me like the scene a lot more, because he won. And bias aside, this scene is just the peak of the monster's action. The fight is arguably the best lit, directed, spectacular, and emotionally impactful of the whole Monsterverse. The lighting in the scene was perfect. The contrast between the dark night, the Hong Kong lights, Godzilla's atomic breath, and Kong's axe just all contrast and complement each other greatly. The direction of how these monsters emote and fight really show off how, well, yes, they're big monsters, they do have character. And the spectacle of the whole scene is brilliant, and you can tell that they put their $100 million budget to good use. Lastly, it's the most emotionally impactful fight of the Monsterverse. Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah was emotionally impactful with Mothra's sacrifice and finally seeing Ghidorah go down, but it doesn't hit as hard compared to GVK. Both these monsters had at least their own great movies to build them up. We got to emotionally connect to both of them, and thus their fight was more resonant. In consequence, Godzilla vs. Kong in Hong Kong is number 7 because of how good the fight is. Number 6, Raiden's Awakening from 2019's Godzilla King of the Monsters. Whilst Godzilla isn't in the scene, nonetheless, it's still one of the best scenes in the whole franchise. Now, I'm not going to go too in depth with the scene because DMan 1954 already made an amazing video on it, which will be linked in the description, and anything I say kinda already has been said there, so it's pretty redundant. So if you're interested and want to hear why this scene is so good, go watch that video after this one. But the sparse notes of it is that basically it can be its own short film. Follow a mother and son, giving us someone we can root for. We see how Rodan impacts everyone, from civilians to Monarch. We get great action of Rodan fighting Monarch, and it all culminates in Ghidorah's appearance and putting Rodan in his place. On the whole, the scene is just great. DMan's video deserves a watch if you're interested. Number 5. Godzilla kills Shindo, 1991's Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah. This is arguably one of the most emotional scenes in the Godzilla franchise, paying off the arc for one of the best human characters in the franchise. The scene starts with Shindo receiving word that his office is in Godzilla's path. He informs the caller on the irony situation and his impending doom. He lowers the phone, and Godzilla turns his head. The two stare, and Shindo gives a small nod. Godzilla roars, and we cut back to Shindo, whose eyes are watering. We see a glimpse of the two's past selves as Godzilla gives a nod. The two acknowledge each other one last time as Godzilla roars and blasts his atomic breath, destroying the office and ending Shindo's life. Wow, this scene, man. Firstly, I want to talk about the dialogueless storytelling. Without any words being exchanged, the audience completely understands the two. We can decipher the two recognize and acknowledge each other with the nods and stares they give one another. All the guilt Shindo has for not saving Godzilla gets unleashed. It's almost as if Godzilla likes Shindo and doesn't want to kill him, but Shindo knows this is where story ends. All of this can be deciphered with a single word of dialogue. It perfectly pays off the connection the two have in one emotionally impactful moment. Also, it could all be wrong. Godzilla could despise Shindo for not saving him, and it's a moment of revenge for him. But this just shows the greatness of the scene, how multiple people can have a vastly different take while still being valid. It also shows how, yes, the monsters are animals, and all animals can feel pain and emotion. He isn't just a mindless force of destruction. He can feel pain, and we're shown it very subtly in this scene. All in all, the scene is spectacular for the great dialogue and storytelling, emotional payoffs, and having one of the best Godzilla moments. Number 4. The Boat Chase, 2023's Godzilla Mindstorm. This is the newest scene, and despite its recency, it belongs here. The scene commences with the crew inspecting a boat destroyed by Godzilla, wondering what could have done it. Then, dead fish start rising from the sea, where Shikishima notes the last time we saw this was on Odo Island, where Godzilla came. Here doesn't discuss the events of the island, Shikishima's role, and if Godzilla is near. And if he is, how they're basically doomed, because all they have is 2 measly bombs and small artillery fire. Then discuss his role in all this and the government's actions. Shikishima and the doctor have a small moment where Shikishima reveals he's still haunted by his actions. Finally, Shikishima realizes how the amount of fish on the water surface was much more than Odo, and they sound the alarms, anticipating Godzilla's approach. They discuss with the other ship they're working with to flee, and suddenly, Godzilla turns the other ship upside down and kills the crew. Our crew then starts to book it for their lives, with Godzilla right behind them. They drop one of their bombs behind, and it hits Godzilla's dorsal plates, but alas, he is unharmed by it, and just causes Godzilla to be more enraged. Godzilla then faces the crew, and the crew starts to shoot at him with their weapon. Godzilla just keeps getting closer and closer, until they get the idea to explode the bomb in his mouth. They're able to successfully get it in his mouth and explode it, but then like Wolverine, Godzilla regenerates. After that, Godzilla rises, starts to open his mouth, when bam, he's shot from the Takeo ships, which redirects Godzilla's attention to them. Despite the size of the ship and their great firepower, Godzilla climbs onto the ship and is about to break it in half when their guns got a direct hit on him. Godzilla then falls into the water. From below the ship, a blue glow appears, and the atomic breath annihilates the ship. Godzilla emerges from the fire and roars, but then flees due to being gravely injured. This scene is one of the most tense in the franchise. Throughout the whole scene, I was on the edge of my seat, wondering how they're going to make it out of it. Where the bomb goes off in his mouth was a great, oh moment, showing how strong and dangerous this Godzilla is. It also built up the characters very well. We got great moments throughout, and it especially contributed to Shikishima's character by having him reconfront his demon. The set pieces were great, and the boats being destroyed and Godzilla's atomic breath was just amazing. The final shot of Godzilla roaring is just great too. Thus, this scene deserves its place as one of the best scenes in the franchise because of how gripping it is, the great character development, and amazing action spectacle. Number 3. Godzilla Attacks Tokyo from the 1954 original. This is the original Godzilla Attacks Tokyo scene, and it's the best. The scene starts with Godzilla emerging from the water. The military has their weapons aimed at him. Godzilla runs into a transmission tower, and the military sends their firepower at him. He unravels himself from the wires by using an atomic breath, which melts them. He then marches into Tokyo. People scream and run as he approaches. He unleashes his atomic breath to destroy houses, buildings, people, everything, and we get to see all of its horror. Emergency services come to help, but then we cut back to Godzilla, who is still causing destruction. The emergency services then get crushed by his wrath. His rampage continues relentlessly as we see the destruction it causes for the people of Tokyo. The military comes back with their tanks and fire at him. Alas, the firepower does nothing to him, and he destroys them with his atomic breath. We cut to Central Command, trying desperately to take control of the situation. Godzilla causes even further destruction as Central Command's ability to handle him slips further from their grasp. He destroys more and more of the city until we get one of the most devastating lines in all of cinema. A bell tower rings, and because of its noise, Godzilla even destroys that. The scene cuts to reporters reporting on the situation as we see the carnage Godzilla caused. Godzilla's attack continues further into the city, but for the sake of not repeating myself in brevity, I'll end the recap there. This is the darkest scene in the Godzilla franchise. In this scene, we truly see the horror Godzilla brings. He fully embodies his nuclear metaphor in this scene, by quite literally working the same way as a nuclear bomb, being a living, breathing embodiment of the horror it can bring. The puppet work for Godzilla and the suit is amazing. They're able to get these sets, suits, puppets, props, all before color was in film is just spectacular. The cinematography is great, as you can definitely see the ruination he brings to Tokyo. The scene is also great by showing us the human sides. We get to see, in an almost uncomfortable amount of detail, the real death and destruction Godzilla brings to the people of Tokyo, punctuated of course by that moment. Conclusively, this scene is amazing because of its thematic resonance, amazing visuals, and brutal moments. Number 2. Godzilla's Meltdown, Godzilla vs. Shoya, 1995. The scene begins shortly after Destroyer was destroyed. Godzilla is on the verge of exploding, an explosion that would destroy the world. Thus, the military developed ice weapons to mitigate the effects of the explosions and are shooting it at him. The weapons neutralize the explosion, however Godzilla cannot be saved and begins to melt down. All of the characters honor Godzilla, with Miki getting the final line. However, as the smoke clears, the radiation levels drop. We see the outline of Godzilla Jr. in the smoke who absorbed the radiation from his father's death, becoming the new Godzilla. This is easily the saddest scene in the entire franchise. Seeing Godzilla die is so impactful. It ended arguably the best year for Godzilla in a truly emotional way. It paid off Godzilla's character very well, while also leaving the door open for his son Godzilla Jr. to become the new Godzilla. His themes of nuclear weaponry and its dangers are put back into the limelight. Many characters get their payoff in this scene, from Dr. Kensaku, who realizes the true power of nuclear weaponry, to Mickey, who ends a relationship with Godzilla in a very poignant way. Also, the scene just hits a lot harder after the death of Kenpachiro Semutsu, the man who played Godzilla throughout the Heisei era. What makes this scene sting even more is that Godzilla died in pain. I don't mean physical pain, that's obvious, but an emotional pain. Godzilla's goal the whole movie was to save his son, and for all that Godzilla knows, he failed on that, which just adds to the emotional heartbreak of the scene. I haven't even mentioned the music. The song that plays here is one of the best pieces of music in the franchise. It really is what pushes it into being the second best scene in the franchise. Also, the scene is truly shocking and sad for a Godzilla fan, seeing how he melts down. In conclusion, Godzilla's Meltdown is the second best scene in the franchise due to its sheer emotional power, amazing music, and truly tearful coup de grace for Godzilla. Before we get to number 1, I want to go through some quick honorable mentions. Shin Godzilla's climax, great action, lots of tension, and very thrilling as we hope they can stop Godzilla before the nuke comes. Flood Tux Gonza -1, amazing action, perfect comic breath, and the characters are done very well. Godzilla's first appearance in 1984, iconic, shocking, great use of visual effects. Its painting in Biolante, shocking, horrifying, great use of music, and sets up the tone for the movie very well. Godzilla and Serizawa's death in 1954, strong thematic resonance, great character moments, and impactful deaths. Godzilla and Kong vs. Mechagodzilla, awesome action, and it's great to finally see Godzilla and Kong team up against a very well-designed Mechagodzilla. Godzilla attacks Shimizu, like the 1954 Tokyo scene, but done in 2001. Without further ado, let's introduce our victor for the best scene in the Godzilla franchise. Number 1. Shin Godzilla Atomic Breath from 2016's Shin Godzilla. This is it. The best scene in the Godzilla franchise, at least to me. The scene begins shortly after Godzilla was hurt from the bomb's military. In reaction to this, Godzilla begins to glow. He unhinges his jaw as it splits into 3. A black smoke spews out from his mouth, and his eyes go fully black. Black smoke transitions into a fiery breath that lights up the city. As the flames cause destruction, it narrows out and becomes a thin purple atomic breath with a piercing sound. The breath slashes through the city like a hot knife through butter, bringing down the B-2s. We cut to the characters as they react to the situation. The B-2s go in for another round of bombs. Godzilla finishes firing from his mouth as he snaps his jaw closed with smoke emitting from it. However, his dorsal plates light up and the atomic breath comes out of it, destroying the bombs in the B-2s. He opens his mouth once again and destroys more of the city. The breath transitions back to fire as he stops using it. We cut to the humans locked underground, unaware of the carnage outside. Godzilla then takes some steps forward and stops to rest, completely drained of his energy due to his attack. This scene encapsulates everything great about Godzilla. The direction is the best it's ever been. Ono truly shows the almost cosmic horror of Godzilla. Also, you can feel Godzilla's pain. While Godzilla is the antagonist, you can't help but sympathize with him because the scene emphasizes how this version of Godzilla is in constant, excruciating pain. The cinematography is peak, as these shots are some of the best ever in cinema history. The visuals are the best in the movie. Whilst the CGI doesn't look amazing throughout the whole movie, in this scene they pull all the budget into it, and the lighting camera work hide the bad parts while emphasizing all the best parts. Creativity in this scene is just off the walls too. The team behind this movie went all out in creating the most unique Godzilla, and this scene is the best demonstration of it, with its unique abilities and mannerisms. It also develops the movie's themes incredibly well. Godzilla being a symbol for the 2011 Tohoku earthquake and tsunami is the most abundant in the film, mimicking the way that disaster played out and showing how Japan's government and bureaucracy were nowhere near enough to handle the tragedy, both in the film and real life. Not to mention the sound that plays is perfect. Who Will Know is a perfect embodiment of Godzilla's character, and it being used here adds to the tragedy of the scene. To conclude, Shin Godzilla's Atomic Breath scene is the best in the franchise due to its perfection of many aspects of film, perfect music, and pure horror. But hey, that's just my list. What's yours? Thanks for watching.